Hi, and welcome back to Borderline Personality Disorder in Bite-Sized Pieces. I believe this is part 7. When someone does not have boundaries, they use many different types of defense mechanisms or many types of ways of living. So somebody like a borderline, for instance, that does not have boundaries, doesn't want to set boundaries, is against boundaries, and feels very affronted when you even mention boundaries, will often be seen using control tactics, using withdrawal, like pulling away from people, silent treatment, blaming, rationalizing, intellectualizing, name calling, perfectionism, black and white thinking, threats, creating false issues to fight over, caretaking to the point of annoyance. I'm not going to look up and tell you what all these things mean. You can do some of that research on your own. But those are just some of the tactics they will use because they refuse to set boundaries. A borderline personality person is so insecure if the non-borderline leaves them or tries to make his or her own choices, that the borderline can actually talk the person out of setting limits. They can actually make you feel guilty about being your own person and making your own decisions. A borderline personality can convince a non-borderline that making choices and acting apart from the borderline means that the non-borderline is selfish, uncaring, controlling, that they are trying to cause problems. So the non-borderline, as a result, also begins to fear that the borderline personality person is going to punish them or leave them or do something terrible to them. So they tend to be very dependent on the borderline, or at least will stay in a situation that's not healthy because they fear what the borderline will do to them. Some non-borderlines live with borderlines suspecting them of cheating on them. Some will stay in relationships where the borderline cheats, gets pregnant, gets other people pregnant, gets STDs, or the non-borderline just basically tolerates being neglected or punished for fear that the borderline will accuse them of being needy, manipulative, controlling, and abusive. It's a lot of role switch, a lot of projection. Some non-borderlines will end friendships or not even start them because the borderline personality person doesn't like who they want to be friends with. The non-borderline personality person will put up with abuse physically and also be deprived of their needs being met. They'll also put up with being isolated from their friends and family, or they will tolerate their children being abused by the borderline, while the non-borderline did not intervene because of the borderline person's reaction. There's something called the dance of anger. And that is where the person that's non-borderline finds themselves become very angry with the borderline personality. And it kind of goes back and forth. The borderline gets angry at them because they're not doing what they want them to do. And then the non-borderline gets angry at the borderline for becoming angry. People secretly or some outwardly believe that their truth is the truth. And everyone needs to believe and follow it, especially with a borderline personality. They think that everything that they perceive is the truth, and everybody else needs to believe that that's how it is. And actually, it's nobody's job or responsibility to force people to follow their reality. It's each person's job to clearly share feelings and thoughts and make choices that honor their values. All right, I'm going to read you something. Just a minute. It's called Relationship Rights. I just have to find my book a second. I thought this is important to read to you because everybody has rights in relationships and you need to know what they are. This is coming from Stop Walking on Eggshells, 2nd edition by Paul T. Mason, MS, and Randy Krieger. This book right here. Stop Walking on Eggshells. Okay. Copyright. Hang on. I'll tell you the copyright in a minute, so we make sure we do everything on the up and up here. The copyright is 2010. All right, so we're going to find page 123. All right. So here you go. You have the right to emotional support, encouragement, and goodwill from the other. You have the right to be heard by the other and to be responded to with courtesy and respect. You have the right to have your own view, even if the other has a different view. You have the right to have your feelings and experiences acknowledged as real. You have the right to a life free from excessive accusations, blame, criticism, and judgments. You have the right to live free from emotional and physical abuse. Now, that actually came from The Verbally Abusive Relationship, How to Recognize It and How to Respond, copyright 1996 by Patricia Evans, a really good author. Asking yourself questions can help you better understand what your limits are. So you're going to ask yourself this: what hurts? What feels good? What are you willing to give up for this relationship? What are the things that other people do that leave you feeling angry and taken advantage of? Are you able to say no to requests without feeling guilty? How physically close can you allow other people to get? At what distance do you begin to feel anxious or uncomfortable? Does the borderline in your life respect your physical limits? All right. And these things can take a long time to answer. The answers can change from time to time, but it's just good things to know about yourself when you get into a relationship, especially with somebody that has borderline personality disorder. So stay tuned. I will be back with part 8 of this series of borderline personality disorder in bite-sized pieces. See you in a bit.